The Shadowed Trail. Day 1. The Beginning. When we first stumbled upon the old leather-bound journal in the cabin's desk drawer, none of us took it seriously. The place we rented for the week was a rustic house deep in the woods, miles away from civilization. It was supposed to be our escape from the stresses of city life. Just me, Alex, and Ethan. 3 childhood friends, reuniting for one last grand adventure before adult responsibilities swallowed us whole. The journal was tucked away in a drawer that had been stuck shut, as if it hadn't been opened in years. I only found it because I was looking for a flashlight. The cover was cracked and faded, the pages brittle with age. Inside, the handwriting was spidery, almost illegible in some places, but the words spoke of a hidden trail leading to breathtaking sights, waterfalls, untouched groves, places no other hikers would find. But there were also warnings, vague mentions of things the writer called shaded ones, entities that watched from the edges of the light. It was the kind of thing you'd expect from an overactive imagination, the sort of spooky story kids tell around a campfire. I read parts of it aloud to Alex and Ethan, laughing at the melodrama, but there was something about the way the author wrote, like he was desperate for someone to believe him, to heed his warnings. It stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. We were there for the adventure, though, and the promise of discovering something truly unique was too tempting. We decided to follow the journal's directions to find the hidden trail, ignoring the warnings like idiots in every horror movie who ever made a bad decision. In hindsight, maybe that's exactly what we were. 3 idiots who didn't know better. But at the time, it felt like a brilliant idea. Day 2. The Trail. We left early, packs heavy with gear, food, and enough water to last us the week. The trailhead wasn't marked, just as the journal said, but we found it with little trouble. A narrow, overgrown path that seemed to disappear into the dense trees. It was the kind of place that wasn't on any map, a path that had been forgotten by time. The deeper we went, the more the forest closed in around us. The trees were impossibly tall, their branches knitting together overhead to form a thick canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. It was beautiful in a way that was almost unnerving, the kind of beauty that felt untouched by human hands. We were the intruders here, and the forest knew it. I don't remember exactly when the unease began to creep in, but by midday, I started to feel like we were being watched. I didn't mention it to Alex or Ethan. They would have just laughed it off. But the feeling lingered, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck that wouldn't go away. The trail was difficult to follow, barely more than a game trail in some places. We had to push through thick underbrush, climb over fallen logs, and navigate around boulders covered in moss so thick it looked like green velvet. But the journal had been clear about the landmarks, the stream that twisted like a snake, the grove of ancient oaks, and we found each one exactly where it was supposed to be. And yet, something felt off. The landmarks were there, but they didn't look quite like I expected. The stream was narrower, the grove darker, the trees older, twisted into shapes that seemed unnatural. But I kept these thoughts to myself, chalking it up to my imagination. As the sun began to set, we found a clearing to make camp. It was a quiet night, the only sounds the crackle of our campfire and the distant hoots of owls. We ate, laughed, and swapped stories. But the shadows cast by the firelight seemed too long, too dark. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, just beyond the light, watching. I told myself I was just being paranoid. We were in the middle of nowhere after all. It was normal to feel a little uneasy, but as I lay in my tent that night, listening to the wind whisper through the trees. I couldn't sleep. The darkness outside felt too thick, too alive, like it was pressing in on us from all sides. That's when I first heard the whispers, faint, almost indistinguishable from the rustling leaves. But they were there, voices that seemed to be calling my name. Day 3, the descent. The next morning, I was exhausted, but I didn't mention the whispers to the others. Maybe I was just tired, I told myself. Maybe it was a dream. We packed up and continued down the trail. The journal said we'd reach a hidden waterfall by noon, a place so remote that no one else would have seen it. But as we walked, the trail seemed to grow narrower, more overgrown, as if the forest itself was trying to swallow it up. And the whispers, they didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent. Sometimes they sounded like my mother's voice, sometimes like old friends from school. But they always said the same thing, my name, over and over, like they were trying to lure me off the trail. At one point, I nearly did. I don't know what came over me, but I felt this overwhelming urge to step off the path, to follow the voices into the trees. It was like they were promising something wonderful, if I just left the trail. But Alex grabbed my arm, snapping me out of it. He didn't say anything, just gave me a look that said he was starting to feel it too. The unease, the wrongness of the place. By the time we reached the spot where the waterfall should have been, the trail had disappeared completely. We stood at the edge of a deep ravine, the sound of rushing water echoing up from below. But there was no waterfall, just a sheer drop into darkness. We must have taken a wrong turn, Ethan said, but his voice was strained, uncertain. We backtracked, trying to find where we went wrong, but no matter which way we went, we couldn't find the trail again. It was as if it had simply vanished, swallowed by the forest. That's when the fighting started. The frustration, the fear, it all bubbled over. Ethan accused me of leading us in circles, said I was the one who insisted we follow the journal. Alex sided with him, saying I was too obsessed with finding the trail to notice we were lost. I tried to defend myself, but their anger was contagious. Before I knew it, we were all shouting, hurling accusations, letting out all the frustrations that had been simmering since the trip began. It was ugly, the kind of fight that leaves you feeling hollow and raw afterward. We split up to cool off, each of us taking a different direction to try and find the trail. It was a stupid idea, but we weren't thinking clearly. I wandered for what felt like hours, but the forest was like a labyrinth, every tree looking the same, every direction leading nowhere. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more insistent. They told me I was the only one who could find the way out, that I just needed to listen, to trust them. But I was too scared to follow. I kept hearing Ethan and Alex's voices in the distance, calling my name, but when I tried to find them, I only ended up more lost. When I finally stumbled back into the clearing where we'd fought, the sun was setting. Alex was there, but Ethan was gone. Day 4. The shadows. "Where's Ethan?" I asked, but Alex just shook his head. "He's gone," was all he said. "What do you mean gone? Did you see him?" "No, I didn't see anything. One minute he was here, the next he wasn't. I heard him call my name, but when I went to find him, he was just gone." The fear in his eyes mirrored my own. Neither of us wanted to say it, but we were both thinking the same thing. That something had taken Ethan, something we couldn't explain. We didn't sleep that night. We sat by the fire, backs to each other, listening to the forest. The whispers were louder now, coming from all directions, weaving through the trees like tendrils of smoke. And the shadows, They weren't just shadows anymore. They moved, creeping closer, stretching out toward the light of the fire. "We need to leave," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "At first light, we head back the way we came." I agreed, though I wasn't sure we'd be able to find our way out. The trail was gone, and the forest seemed to shift and change around us, like it was alive, like it was playing with us. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. I could feel them tugging at the edges of my mind, pulling me toward the darkness. And I could tell Alex felt it too. He kept muttering to himself, shaking his head like he was trying to shake off a bad dream. When the fire finally died, we were plunged into darkness. I could feel the shadows closing in, cold and suffocating. I tried to relight the fire, but my hands were shaking too badly. Then I heard it, Ethan's voice, calling my name from the trees. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to Alex, but he didn't respond. I turned to see him staring into the darkness, eyes wide, mouth open, in a silent scream. "Alex!" I reached out to touch him, but he recoiled, as if my touch burned. He turned to me, his face pale and gaunt, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. There was something in his eyes, something dark and hungry. "Stay away," he hissed, backing away from me. "You did this. You brought us here." "What are you talking about?" I asked. But deep down, I knew what he meant. He wasn't the Alex I knew anymore. The fear, the whispers, they had gotten to him, and maybe they had gotten to me too. Maybe this whole time I had been leading us deeper into the forest, leading us to our doom. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. For bringing them here, for not listening to the warnings, for whatever was about to happen next. Alex didn't respond. He just turned and ran into the forest, into the darkness. I didn't try to stop him. I didn't even try to follow. I just sat there, in the cold, dark clearing, listening to the whispers, waiting for the shadows to swallow me whole. Day 5. The Escape. When I woke up, the sun was rising, casting pale, weak light through the trees. The whispers were gone, and so was Alex. I was alone. I don't know how long I sat there, staring into the ashes of the fire, trying to piece together what had happened. It felt like a dream, like I had been lost in some terrible nightmare. But the fear, the dread, that was real. I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to keep moving, to find a way out before whatever took Alex and Ethan came for me too. I started walking, not knowing where I was going, just putting one foot in front of the other. The forest was quiet now, the only sound my own ragged breathing. The trail was gone, but I didn't care. I just had to get out, to get away from the shadows. I don't know how long I walked. Hours, days. Time didn't seem to matter anymore. The forest was a maze, every direction leading back to the same spot, like I was trapped in some kind of twisted loop. But I kept going, driven by some primal instinct to survive. Then, just when I was about to give up, I saw it, the edge of the forest, the light of the sun, filtering through the trees. I ran toward it, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air, and then I was out. The forest spat me out onto a dirt road, the sun bright and blinding. I collapsed onto the ground, sobbing, my body shaking with relief. I was out. I had made it. But as I lay there, staring up at the sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't escaped. Not really. That something had followed me out. Something dark and twisted. Something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. When they found me a few days later, I couldn't tell them what had happened. I couldn't tell them about the whispers, the shadows, the way the forest had twisted and changed around us. They wouldn't have believed me if I tried. So I told them what they wanted to hear, that we got lost, that Alex and Ethan must have gone in a different direction, that I was the only one who found the way out. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't escape the forest. It let me go. And now, it's waiting for me to return. Epilogue. The Watchers. Months have passed since that night, but the memories still haunt me. I see the shadows in my dreams, hear the whispers in the quiet moments. I tell myself it's just my mind playing tricks on me, the lingering trauma of what happened. But I know better. The forest is out there, waiting, watching, and one day, I know I'll have to go back. One day, it will call me again. And this time, I won't be able to resist. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Also, share what stories you would like to hear next.